So today we're talking about developing empathy in relationships. And again, it's so ironic because, it was only a few days ago we did a bunch of talks all about how to be empathic in relationships in a healthy way, because it's sometimes so difficult when we feel so much. But there's really quite a spectrum in the world of people, some who feel everything and others who feel nothing in relationships. And it actually is something we have to develop, how to actually connect with each other on an emotional level, not just through our words, not just through what we're doing, but actually feel this other person in front of us. And this is no small thing. Like, it's easy to kind of say, well, you just open up, right? But it's not that easy. So this talk actually was inspired by a student of mine in California who was taking my course in the masculine and feminine. And so he was trying to understand, this whole idea of the masculine reading the feminine, right? Because that's the whole point. In all interactions, whoever's in the masculine, whoever's speaking, must read their audience. Whoever is giving must read the one who is receiving. It's never about imposing. It's always about reading them and connecting with them. And he was saying how he was having a conversation with his girlfriend, or he was part of a conversation with his girlfriend and her friends, maybe. I can't remember. And they were talking about how one of them had gone on a date. And she met this really nice guy, and they were sitting on this park bench, and the date was going really well. And then all of a sudden, this guy just attacked her. He just started making out with her and feeling her up, and she was just like, what just happened? Like, this is so weird, right? And the guy was like, what? You want me to be assertive? And she's like, yeah, but this isn't what I wanted. And he goes, well, how am I supposed to know what you wanted? So my student, or the guy who he talked about this in his homework, he said, isn't that interesting? He said how hard it is to read others. And this guy's a very sensitive person. Like, he's he's taking a course in intimacy and connecting, right? So he's obviously already bent this way, right? He's already interested in genuine, intimate connection with others, right? But even he said, I've realized in talking to her that I don't really know if I'm reading other people properly either. He said, I want to, but I don't know if I am or not. And he said, these guys definitely aren't. And he said, then the women all were sort of talking about it, and they said, oh yeah, this is like normal. This is normal, the normal dating world right now. Like, it's a nightmare or whatever. I'm not sure it was ever any better 100 years ago, but they said it's just a nightmare. And, they didn't know whether it was because of porn or whether of this, or sort of the ease of dating apps that you just kind of keep flipping to the next possibility or whatever. But what this man said, he said, it's like we have a kind of social illiteracy, that we actually don't know how to interact with other people, not in a genuine way. We know how to interact in separation, like we know how to, I'm going to talk, you're going to talk, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this. We know how to be forceful. We know how to withdraw. We know how to manipulate. We know how to do all kinds of things, but none of these things actually have empathic connection. None of these things actually connect with the other person, or we couldn't do it. We can't manipulate someone we're actually emotionally connected to. We can't hurt someone who we're emotionally connected to. We won't withdraw, right? We actually, because we're connected, we're one. We're actually having this wonderfully connected experience, right? So this was sort of, he must have asked me this question a couple months ago, and it's been rolling around in my consciousness. Not necessarily what the answer is, but where do we begin the discussion around how to actually develop real connection in all of our interactions, not just in intimate partners or on a date, but even with our children or with our friends or whatever. How often are we actually emotionally tuning in with this other person as opposed to just coming in with our thoughts or our expectations or what we want to accomplish here? Like, how often does that actually happen? Even among people who are into this kind of thing. Like, I mean, I personally am thinking of this. Like, I'm thinking how often I get together with friends, and do I have an intention? Do I have a persona I'm trying to maintain? And do I have something other than actually walking into a room and actually emotionally connecting with every person there? You know, for me, I'm actually quite shy in groups. Even in groups of people I know, if I'm not careful, not like really, really close friends, but if like I'm going out tonight, and the people I know them, but I don't know them, or I don't know their partners. That, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know them. And as soon as I walk into that room, a shyness comes over me, like my little 10-year-old shy self rises, and I am not emotionally connecting with anyone in the room now. I'm trying to look okay, and I'm trying to say the right thing, and I'm trying to not be, I'm doing something else, but I'm not empathically connecting with anyone, right? And so it's just interesting. So it's not it's not a big criticism if we struggle with this, because it's new, right? So if we went into our past, if we went into our it's so interesting. I've been watching this show lately on Netflix called Murdoch Mysteries, which, if you're from Toronto, you will know it because it's actually set in Toronto in the 1800s, which is very exciting for a Canadian because nothing is set in Canada. So we get very excited about anything set in Canada, let alone Toronto. But it's likely not very well known beyond here. But what's interesting about it is watching humanity in the 1800s, right? Because it's actually a beautiful show, really beautifully researched as to what was current at the time, what science was just coming out, how they would use heroin as a sedative, like just all kinds of interesting things that make you go, you know. But also what's interesting is watching people interact with each other. So anyway, it's really valuable to sometimes go back in our ancestry and look at why we ever connected with each other before. And I mean with all other people. Like, imagine here we are in our perfect unity as a person, and someone else is over here in their perfect unity. Why do we choose to actually interact with another? Like, why do we come out of our little perfect perfection and actually choose to connect with another? Well, in the past, why would we do that? Maybe we wanted something from this person. Maybe we wanted them to protect us. Maybe we were horny. Maybe we, wanted to be seen with them. Maybe we wanted to control them. Maybe it made us feel good to feel powerful because we could manipulate them or make them frightened or whatever. And, when you really look back in time, there were a lot of twisted reasons why we connected. Or not twisted, but certainly not requiring any emotional connection, right? And even today, how often do we approach someone and the only reason we're actually wanting to connect with them is because we want something from them, right? It's the big difference, I think, even in intimate relationships. The difference between someone wanting to hang out with you and genuinely wanting to kind of merge with you and just be with you and experience wherever you're at, and that happens to blend into lovemaking later. That's one experience. The experience of someone coming to you because they want something they want to have sex and you're their partner, that's a very different feeling. Like, and you can feel that a mile away, that they're not actually coming to connect with you. They want something, right? And then again, I'm not demonizing that either. Sometimes a partner can come up to you and go, "Hey, I'm kind of, in the mood," and you're like, "Right on, I'm in," right? Like, it's not always some awful thing. But there's a lot of resentment in relationships that grow over decades because of that. And again, it's not evil. It's where we've come from. It's not something that we said, I'm going to choose connection, or I'm going to choose using you, or whatever. We didn't know any different. We thought this was just what it was, right? So now, imagine we reframe all this. Because the question today is, how do we develop empathy in relationships? So the first thing is we have to actually want to connect with this other person, right? Imagine something as simple as having a conversation. Why do you want to have this conversation with this other person? Right? Do you want to have the conversation because you want to convince them of something? Or maybe you have something rolling around in your head and you just need to say it out loud? Or maybe you've ascertained that there's something that they're doing wrong with their life and you have a great idea for them? Well, none of these things, if any of these are our intention, we aren't going to have any empathy. We aren't going to connect with them because we don't need to. We are wanting something from the interaction. The connection's not the point, right? Or maybe we just want to hang out with someone, but we're not wanting to connect with them. We just don't want to be alone. So I just want to have you in the room. I don't really want to connect with you, but I just want to have you in the room. It's when I've had people tell me in the past that they actually just felt like they were a piece of furniture to their partner. They just wanted to make sure they were there. They had no interest in talking to them. They just wanted to know they were there. Or even making love, just like in the previous example, right? Why do you want to make love? Do you want to make love because you can't sleep and you just want to, orgasm and try to exhaust yourself? Do you want to make love because you're frustrated and you want to, release something? Do you want to make love to make yourself feel good? Like, why? Right? Or do you actually just want to explore being with this other person? It's always funny, right? When I'm teaching Tantra, Tantric intimacy, whether it's through courses or my book, or whatever, it's always an interesting question when you ask someone, but why do you want to have sex? Why do you want to make love? And if I say to them, how about you not ejaculate and don't try for an orgasm? Obviously the long-term effect of this exercise is becoming orgasmic as opposed to having an orgasm, which is literally like an entirely different experience. But it's amazing how many people, if I was to say, completely release the expectation of orgasm and ejaculation, how many people say, well, why would I do it then? Or, I don't really want to then. And again, it's not evil, but just to really understand the context in what our conversation is today. The intention must be connection, or else we will never develop empathy. We will never develop an emotional connection if it isn't what we actually want, right? So there's a few things that I want to talk about, and I want to talk about them in examples. One of the first things we have to do, if we truly want to develop empathy with others, is we have to release all expectations of the encounter. Whether it's a conversation, whether it's being together, whether it's making love, whether it's anything. We have to release all expectations, because as soon as our brain is in there, we are going to override anything that's going to happen with our brain. Whether we want to see is happening or not, it doesn't matter, because it'll just simply override it, right? And if our brain is overriding it, we will feel nothing from this other person, right? The second thing, and I'll talk more about all of these in different examples. The second thing is to allow yourself to be like a hollow bamboo. Osho used to talk about this. I think it was Osho. He used to talk about how if you can empty yourself like a hollow bamboo, then when the lips of the divine are upon you, this is the song you sing, or something like that. Wow, I totally ruined that. It's a much better quote than that. But that's the sense of it, right? When we can become hollow, we are receptive, you know? Another part that we'll talk about is that we have to be connected to our own emotional side, right? If we aren't connected to our own emotions, how can we possibly connect to someone else's, right? If we are uncomfortable with sadness, with anger, with frustration, as soon as we feel it in someone else, it's going to trigger us, it's going to make us uncomfortable, and we're going to disconnect, right? We aren't going to be able to continue to feel that. So it's really important. You know, previously we talked about emotional intelligence, mixing all of our emotional truth into who we really are. So this is really, really important. And then the other part is actually making sure we are able to drop our own guards. If I want someone to be able to read me, then I can't be guarded, right? I can't be asking them to like be breaking down the ice house that I've placed around me and then wonder why they're not reading me. Or I can't be sending out a million mixed messages because I'm so confused and frightened and then be angry that they didn't read me properly, right? So there's a bunch of things we have to be conscious of when we consider how we're interacting with people. So let's start with this idea. Let's take our first example of going on a date. And this may not be many of our experiences presently or whatever, but let's imagine we're on the Love Boat or something. So let's imagine you meet some person online, or you match with someone online, and you're going to go and you're having your first meeting, your first date. Well, what are the chances you're actually going to be able to emotionally connect with this person, right? You have so many fears and thoughts and hopes and expectations and everything on the line. That's no small thing to be able to put all that aside. So what's really interesting to me is simply creating the intention of connecting emotionally. What if that's the only point of the first date, right? What if the only point is forgetting about all the expectations? Like, so for one, we get rid of all expectations. This doesn't have to work out. I don't have to like this person. They don't have to like me. I remember when I was dating, and to me, I always considered the first date, I considered it a meeting, because that's sort of how it really would have happened. You would have met someone at a party or a bar or through a friend, but you would meet them and you'd kind of get a smell of them, right? There's sort of this like, and I remember the very first date I ever went on, or this first meeting I ever went on, and we were meeting at a coffee shop, and this guy got out of his car, like in the parking lot, and as soon as he even got out of his car, I hadn't even seen his face, I already knew it was a no. Like, he hadn't even spoken. But it was like my soul went, no. Like, it's almost like our soul's looking for someone, and the person in front of us is either that person or it's not. It's not about what they look like. It's not about whether they're tall or short or fit my little list that I have. Because some people, your soul just goes, oh, I'd like to see you again. I don't know why. And other people are like, I don't know why, but it's just not a thing. And that's a tough thing to swallow when you're single. That it's not what Hollywood says. It's not, it's, in Hollywood, if someone doesn't like you, then it's you. You're not good looking enough, you're not this, you don't have the right job, you don't, whatever, you're not tall enough, short enough, boobs aren't big enough, whatever, right? You're just something that's wrong with you, because the pretty girls always get the man, or the hot guy always gets the woman, or whatever, right? It's, I apologize for the heteronormative statements there, but that's what we have emblazoned in our brains, that if this doesn't work out, there's something wrong with me. And this is a huge deal to get over, right? When you're dating, to kind of say, we're just meeting. We're just meeting on a park bench, hanging out. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, great. So anyway, when I got a bit wiser after I'd been dating for a few years, I would actually tell guys, they'd say, okay, well, I'm really looking forward to meet you. And, I can, and they'd want to talk about personal things. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to talk about personal things with you until we've met, because honestly, there's a 99% chance that we're not a match. And guys would be like, what? You haven't even met me. And I said, I know. I'm just saying that if you lined 100 guys up along the street, there's probably one that I'd be interested in dating. It's nothing personal. It's some weird soul thing. I can't even tell you. I don't have a type. I don't have anything like that. I just know that for some reason, most people are a no. I don't know why. Anyway, it was really funny. But it kind of alleviated a lot of this weird pressure that you're supposed to be, it alleviated the expectation, right? That we actually really were going to start as acquaintances, see if we even enjoyed each other's company, to see if we actually could connect emotionally, to see if we actually felt safe to drop our guards with each other. That's a huge deal, right? If you don't feel safe to drop your guards, you won't. And it's like you feel it. You energetically feel it with another person, right? So imagine you're on this date and you drop all your expectations and you actually just look at this person. And you're like, so how are you? I'm great. No, I really mean it. Like, really, how are you? And if you're lucky, they may tell a story. And within that story, if they share themselves, they may emote, right? They may actually share themselves with you. And you'll feel them, right? But we have to be open. But I swear, like, the number one thing is just the intention to be open. And release all requirements for this to go one way or the other, right? So let's take an example where someone in your life is upset. Let's say they're really upset. Like they're crying, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're pissed off about something. And you are the one that's with them. If our intention, so then the first thing we have to do is we have to ask ourselves, what is our expectation and what is our intention for being with our friend or our child or our partner who's having a problem? What if our expectation is to make them feel better? There's a dangerous one, right? What does that mean? Right? What does that mean? I'm going to make you feel better, right? Last week, Monday, Tuesday, I had my butt in a knot. I was so angry. And I really let myself dive into the anger because I don't let it happen. No, that's not how I mean it. Anger's not my normal response to things. So when it happens, I pay attention. In the land of an emotion that I never allowed myself for most of my life. If I get angry, I want to know what's really inside of that. And so I was furious for a few days. I mean, you're still functional, right? Emotions don't mean that you have no other gears, but when I was sitting by myself drinking coffee, it would all come back. And I was able to angry journal. And my one friend was over, and she's like super empathic, intuitive friend, right? And I was just like, oh, I'm just, like I was just so angry. And she just sort of looked at me. And so as I kept talking, she'd say, ooh, wow, that one is really heavy, eh? That statement you just made, that's a good one. Let's sit with that for a bit, right? Her intention is never to fix me, ever. Because the goal isn't to stop being angry or stop being sad. Emotions are important, right? So if someone's upset, the best thing we can do is witness them. The emotion will subside when it's complete, when it's done its job, when it has sent the message and the message has been received. The emotion will suddenly disappear. I'm not angry now. I got to go right to the very bottom of it, and I heard what it had to say, and I heard the anger that was actually floating within me for 50 years, and I went, oh, that's really valuable to know. But I would never want someone to come over whose intention was to stop me from being angry, or stop me from being sad, or stop my grieving process, or anything like that. So again, if someone's upset, if we want to develop empathy with them, we cannot have an expectation, even one that seems altruistic, like I want my friend to feel better. Why? Why do I want them to feel better? Right? Obviously we want them to feel better, but it's not up to me to change their emotional state. This is an important truth that is rising within them. So if we want to connect empathically with them, and if we really want to help them, we connect emotionally with them and feel it with them. And they'll be like, oh, and I think it's this, because sometimes when we're upset, our mind will go into other places. And if we're connecting with them emotionally, we will feel the charge on one statement and a lack of charge on another, right? The friend might be like, oh, I know this is really bothering me. And then you know what else? And then this person, and then, and then can you believe he did this? And if you're actually connected emotionally with them, you can say things like, that doesn't feel as loaded as what you just said. Because sometimes we can get lost in our mind, right? We can get lost in the old stories, which maybe actually aren't even online anymore. So a friend, lover, parent, who actually is emotionally connecting with you with no expectation, no intention to change you, is this wonderful hollow bamboo that you actually get to share truth with. And you get to have someone actually with a clear slate who's not lost in the stories of the mind say, yeah, that does feel loaded. No, that doesn't feel so loaded. This is a very valuable conversation, right? And no one walks away carrying anything. The person who is there as sort of the helper doesn't walk away carrying it. The person will sort this out. They will process these emotions and come out the other side, right? Huge blessing to release all these expectations of the other person, right? So let's imagine the relationship between parent and child. And if you don't have children, even remembering when you were a child, right? This dynamic, because it's a very important dynamic, because it's the dynamic of the caregiver and the cared for, and this can be in so many places. It can be in education, it can be at work, it can be government, it can be all kinds of things. So this dynamic is really important, regardless of where we are in life and whether we're raising children or ever have. But imagine, historically, if a child was upset, what happened? They were maybe punished, sent to their room. You go to your room until you sort this out, until you're fit to be with other people. right? That's a zero connection. Zero. And it's even teaching the child to disconnect from their own feelings, right? So now again, the child is upset. And this child could be a teenager, they could be 2, they could be 40. This could also be a friend, obviously, but it's a bit of a different dynamic. So if the parent's goal, for one, the parent has to be comfortable with their own emotions, right? So if the child's upset, they're not personally getting triggered into their own sadness or frustration or anger, right? But let's assume we're a hollow bamboo and the child's upset. And we actually have the ability to look at them and connect with what they're upset about. Because how often do people really struggle to actually voice what they're really upset about? Sometimes what will happen is they're actually so hurt inside. What comes out is defense mechanisms, or anger, or frustration, or stories, or deflection, or the million ways we avoid our own pain. To actually be able to look at someone and let whatever they're saying be said, but feel them, right? Be open to that. But again, no expectations, because if we come in, like sometimes we have history with people, right? Friends, children, partners, and we think, oh, they're just being overly emotional, or oh, they're just out for attention, or oh, they just didn't get their own way, or oh, they're just trying to manipulate me. Like we have all kinds of things we bring in to an emotional situation. And then we can't hear, we can't feel. So instead, imagine we feel this other person, we feel this child, and we say, are you sure this is what you're upset about? Because I just feel a lot of sadness, or I feel a lot of hurt or something. And there's something magical that happens beyond the words, beyond the sharing. There's something that when someone else feels you, right? When someone else is actually taking the time to feel you, something beyond these dimensions happens. Like I don't even know how to find the words, but there's something more beyond just being physically present, mentally present, emotionally present. Something happens in the universe that this person lets their guards down because they actually genuinely know you're really listening. And amazing truths are shared. But we must come in clear. We must come in hollow bamboo. Because otherwise we're just imposing ourselves on someone else. Like how often, like let's say your children are grown and they're struggling to find their journey, their life path, their work, their this. And as a parent, you naturally think, oh, well, if they could just do this, or maybe they should go to school, or maybe they should do this. And I just want to make the right choices for them. Right? Like, how's that received? Right? And if a child knows that you're just going to come and steamroll over them anyway, and you're just going to project your own emotional state or your emotional story from your childhood onto them, they're going to wall off, put up huge guards, and you're never going to be able to read them. It's a huge deal, this idea of actually just genuinely connecting with people. Like even imagine connecting with a child or a parent or a friend, and your only intention was to experience the essence of this other person. Like, I'm going out with a friend this afternoon, and it's always interesting because, we've had a long history together and a million conversations about a million things, and it's almost like my mind starts to preemptively imagine what we're going to talk about. Oh, I bet we're going to go to this topic and then this topic. Like, I don't even know why it does that. I don't even know what we're going to do. All I know is we're going to get together, and I'm already imagining the whole event. What if my only goal was to go and hang out with my friend? And imagine all it was to open my heart and feel her. And that was the pool we were going to swim in. No expectation, no nothing. Just have a genuine, loving interaction with a friend. It's radical. It's just a radical concept sometimes. So then let's imagine making love, because I like talking about making love. Imagine walking into that with no expectations. Here you have this person that for some reason you have a different attraction to than you do to others. Something deeper, something magical. Eros isn't something you can cultivate. You can't create true Eros. You can have lust and be horny and all that kind of thing, but true Eros, true romantic connection with someone, this is very special, right? That's a very juicy pool to dive into. Like, forget about even the sex part. I mean, sex is like the structure, right? It's kind of like, here's kind of the structure of what we're going to do, you know? Maybe we're going to go play racquetball later, but right now we're going to do this exercise or this way of connecting. But it's just the bones of it. What's happening in between? What's happening in this beautiful connection with this person who you have this very unique and interesting, you know, in my previous example, 1 in 100 chance of even finding, right? I mean, it's probably 1 in 10,000 actually, but what if you have this incredible connection? Imagine emotionally connecting with this person, connecting with their soul, connecting to where they are right now. So especially imagine you're in a committed relationship, you're in a long-term relationship of some flavor, and you're really feeling a desire to connect with them. Like, you genuinely you love them, you want to feel close. So if our brain gets involved and says, oh, okay, well, you know what? It's been probably like 4 days since we had sex, so probably that's what I should do. Or, you know what I should do? I think maybe if I... We're not connecting. But instead, we first connect. And we go and we sit on the couch with our lover. And we empty ourselves of all expectations. We allow ourselves to fall into hollow bamboo. We drop all of our own guards and fears. And we feel this person beside us. Maybe we put our arm around them. Maybe we say, hey, you know, or maybe something in you doesn't even feel like they want an arm around them. So you just sort of look at them and say, how you doing? How was work today? And they look at you, and I'm telling you, people can feel when you're being genuine. They can feel when you're genuinely present in the moment and you haven't brought anything to the table except you. And like, who are we kidding? What's more valuable than that? Right? And the person, you know, says, oh, you know, I'm really having a hard day today. You know, someone said something and it's rolling around in my head and I can't let it go. It's like, like, do you want to talk about it? I don't know. It's like, do you want to go for a walk? Yeah, that would be nice. And then you get your duds on and you walk outside and you hold hands and you go for a nice walk together. Right? And then maybe you come home and you go, like, do you feel like, you know, ordering pizza? Yeah, that'd be great. Marlena, that'd be awesome. And there's no expectation. Because the only interest was actually being connected to this other beautiful human. That was the only intention. And if the rest of the night is spent, you know, hey, you want to watch Murdoch Mysteries and eat ice cream? You just spent a glorious 5 hours with this person you love more than anyone in the whole world. Or maybe at some point in the night, you're sitting on the couch, you know, watching Love Boat or whatever we're doing. Not that it always has to end up watching TV. I don't know why I'm talking about that. And all of a sudden, something passes between you, right? We know what this something feels like. And something, all of a sudden you kind of go, and all of a sudden you're kissing, and all of a sudden you're two teenagers making out on the couch. Next thing you know, you're ripping each other's clothes off. But there's nothing more amazing as when that was not planned and it was not an intention. Because the only reason you're doing it is because the connection got deeper and deeper and safer and deeper and deeper. And then this lovemaking, it's like it becomes the, I don't know, the all the words I have are wrong. The climax, the inevitability, or whatever. I don't know. You know what I mean. But it's the culmination of this beautiful connection, right? And it's interesting because I think for some people it's sort of that, when we circle back to the original story of the man and the woman on the date, and they're sitting on the bench, and obviously the guy didn't know, right? It's not about demonizing him or demonizing all these guys that try to attack you or something, and it's not certainly gendered at all. This can be anybody. But what if there was no expectation for him? He didn't feel any requirement. He didn't have any hope or expectation that he was going to get lucky. And he actually just sat with this other human and allowed it to take as long as it took to feel some kind of connection or some kind of something. I don't know. Sometimes I think it's just about slowing way, way, way down, Do you think this level of openness, connection, intention is compatible with monogamy? Yes, I think it's, I don't even think it's specific to monogamy or polyamory or anything like that. I think it's always what you bring to the connection. I could go on a date with someone and make love with them that night, and we can have a beautiful, open, empathic connection. I actually can't do anything else. I have no interest in anything else, right? I think the challenge with monogamy is more our history of the rules and expectations around lifetime obligation of marriage and that idea, because people stop trying and they're mean to each other and there isn't kindness. And so sometimes in a monogamous relationship like that, there's a lot of bad behavior and there's a lot of using each other. And but I don't think it's a function of monogamy. I personally love being monogamous. I love the deep dive of finding this person and becoming closer and closer and closer and closer, and really getting to explore depths that you can with someone that is so safe, and you're so in love with them, and you're so aroused by them, and you just get to explore deeper and deeper and deeper, And that, I'm not saying that can't happen in polyamory or anything else. I just don't have any experience there. But I personally love monogamy. So, what about connecting to self first and then connecting with a partner? 100%. If we can't connect with self, if we cannot connect with our own emotions, if we aren't honoring our own emotions, which is our truth, like emotions mean my response to reality, that is my truthful response to reality, just like a litmus strip. right? If you're testing for something and you put a strip in the thing, if it turns blue, it means this. If it turns pink, it means this. That's our emotions. This is just how I feel. It's just reality. And if we can't connect to ourselves, we won't connect with anyone else. Like, we just won't. We won't even recognize what we're experiencing with this other person. It's like, for me, like, years ago, I mean, I told you, many of you guys this, that, I went through a time when a lot of people died in my family, like, a lot. And grief was almost a constant in me and everyone around me. So I can feel grief. We've all had this experience, but you can feel grief a mile away. But I also know the importance of feeling it right to its very end. I won't sit with someone who's grieving with any intention on fixing them, because I know that grief ends when it's complete. So if I don't connect with my own grief and honor, like if I'm someone who, say, never cried, never felt it, just kept going forward, perfectly stoic, right? Well, then I won't be able to connect with someone else who's grieving, right? I remember the weird things I tell you guys. I had, honestly, I can't believe I tell you guys these things. I had very brutal childbirths. I almost died. Bad childbirths. And had ended up in surgery. And in both surgeries, the first one was the most traumatic. The freezing wore off in the middle of the surgery, in the middle of the C-section. And I was wide awake. And it was so traumatic, and I won't go into details, that I actually broke all the armbands that I was tied down with for the surgery, and I sat up on the surgical table, screaming, because the trauma was stored in my body. I couldn't walk for 6 months. My husband used to carry me down the stairs with the baby, because I had a brand new baby, because I couldn't walk. I didn't know. It wasn't until I had my second that they opened me up again, and all my organs were stuck together in the wrong place and everything because of me sitting up on the surgical table. Horrible experience. I'm over it now. My son is 26, and I've done a lot of processing through the trauma. But I still remember when I was home at the beginning, and my mom died while I was pregnant with my son. So my family was kind of scattered, and a heavy emotional story to share with you guys. That was a really, really hard time, and I was really hurting, and I was feeling very isolated, living on the farm, away from all my family and friends, and all my family was grieving my mom. I'd just gone through this horrible experience. My husband was so traumatized because he was in the room. Like, I swear, I think he was almost more traumatized than I was. And I mean that legitimately. And I remember someone coming to visit to see the baby. And I'm a mess, right? Like, I'm not even human. Like, I can't walk. My son colicked. My breast milk was, I was very, very hard time. And this woman walks in, and she'd had 4 children a long time ago. And she looked at me, and it wasn't like I was complaining. I was just saying that I was really having a hard time, and I had a lot of pain, and I couldn't walk, and, and at the time I didn't know why I couldn't walk yet. And she looks at me and she says, I had 4 children. She said, it was less pain than a single kidney stone. You just obviously have a low pain tolerance. Here's me, 25 years old, and this woman just lays me flat, right? And like this is this total lack of empathy, like this total lack of connection. You know, for all the, I mean, I'm telling you this story about me, but that experience, it really, I mean, obviously it really affected me, but it, I don't know, I understand emotional states differently, you know, because I remember what that felt like. You know, I remember what that feels like. So if I feel that in another person, I will never do what that woman did to me, right? I will never come in and, oh, obviously you just have a poor pain tolerance or something. And I mean that emotionally, physically, anything. You know, like it's really important to connect. Wow, this is a long story all about connecting to self first before we connect to others, huh? Just never know where the rabbit hole's gonna go. But yeah. But anyway, it was really interesting even going through the processing of all of that trauma to kind of really come to a whole new understanding of what people go through in life. I don't mean just childbirth, I mean life, right? My concern is dealing with the emptiness of a narcissist. Can never give enough to them. You know, I had a weird sense that I was going to tell a story this morning. And the narcissist thing is a big deal. So, in my journeys as I was traveling a few years ago, one day I ended up in Greece. And, sorry, that's a longer story, but, well, actually, I am going to tell you this little part of the story because it's just funny. It's a funny story. My first book, What If You Could Skip the Cancer, came out in 2009. And in 2010, I was living in the town I'm in right now, this little town of 8,000 people, middle of rural Ontario, Canada. And these two women flew to Canada from Greece because their sister lived in London, Ontario, just about an hour south of here. And she was dying of cancer. And her sisters came in from Greece and visited her in the hospital, went to a local drugstore and found my book, What If You Could Skip the Cancer? And they read it, cover to cover, and somewhere in there it must have said that I lived in Goderich. So they drove to Goderich to come and find me, to see if I would go and talk to their sister and see if I could help. And so I did. And I got to know the family, and they were a really awesome, lovely Greek family. But then I lost touch with them, right? Life happened. And then 2018, I find myself in Halifax, Canada. And I've just given away everything I own, and I'm just sitting on my laptop with my friend in a cafe. And all of a sudden my phone starts ringing. And it's this woman from back in 2010. And we'd stayed sort of Facebook friends, but never had any interaction. And it was her calling, and I pick up the phone. I'm like, Stella? And she's like, Katrina? And she says, why are you on this phone call? I'm talking to my son in Corinth. And I'm like, I can't add myself to your phone call. And she said, okay, well, obviously you're meant to come to Greece. So about, a year later, I find myself on a flight to Sicily to stay with a family to help with their English. And she messages me, she says, okay, now it's time for you to come to Greece. And I'm like, well, I am on my way to Sicily, so that's really awesome. She goes, okay, then you will come and stay with my family, and you will do this, and da-da-da. And I was like, awesome, right? So I end up in Greece, staying with her family. Next thing you know, I'm sitting in her husband's garage, and he doesn't speak a word of English, and it's and so he's sort of sitting across the table, and my friend is sitting here, and she speaks very good English. And he looks at me and he starts speaking. And he's kind of an old Greek dude, right? Like kind of very, very guarded, very stoic, you know. And this is what he says to me. And again, the language barrier is there because this is all coming through a translation. And he looks at me and he says, Katrina, you do know that all philosophy came out of Greece. And of course, I have all these visions of my big fat Greek wedding popping into my head, right? I start laughing. And he says, no. He's like, listen. So he tells me a story. And this story came from his teacher. And his teacher was this great metaphysics teacher, kind of like a modern day Nostradamus. And he wrote all these amazing books, but they were never translated into English. So they never really left Greece. And anyway, this is what this man went on to tell me. And you guys can take this with a grain of salt or a block of salt, or you can take whatever resonates as true for you. He said, on the earth right now, there are 3 kinds of beings walking the planet that all look human. He said the first, he said he called them anthropomorphs. And they run on 2 elements, and they have no soul. And he said most of the world we're living in right now is run by them. That's why it's based on consumerism, money, you know, cruelty, lack of connection, lack of emotion, lack of all the things we're talking about right now, right? And he said then there are the humans. And humans have 4 elements, and they have a soul. And of course, my mind, as I'm listening to this, is just, a million things are clicking into place, like to the point that my body's like literally vibrating. I'm so, you know. And then he says, and then there are the Greeks, which of course I burst into laughter. And he says, no. He says, I don't mean anyone born in Greece. He says, we will call them the Hellenes, the people that first came to Greece many eons ago. And he talked about the great philosophers. You know, what a strange collection there was then. The Platos, the Heraclitus, the Aristotles, and how we're still trying to catch up with that level of metaphysical understanding of the universe, right? And he said the Hellenes run on 5 elements. They also have ether. And he said there will come a time soon that at the end of the anthropomorphs, and they will leave the planet. They have no choice, and they're going to go out, clawing their way out. And this was back in 2019, I guess. He told me this story. And what's really interesting about this story for me, because there's a million ways where we can go where I don't want to go today, but I've never, ever understood narcissists, sociopaths. I've never understood people that seem to have no soul, not even that they didn't want it. Some people don't feel other people because they have walls because they've been hurt, right? That's different. I've never understood the ones who have no seeming capacity for empathy until this man told me this story. And I don't know if it's true. It resonates as truth for me. But so in this capacity, this is why you can't deal with a narcissist. You're not necessarily maybe dealing with a human. And I know this sounds so anti-spiritual. This sounds like, talk about something that literally through everything I've ever learned about spirituality, and we are all one, and all this stuff, just threw it on its head. But I hold it in my consciousness, right? It's just allowing all these realities to create the diamond that really is our experience. And whether I understand it or not, I know it resonates. And so if I encounter someone, you kind of go, right? And again, and even beyond all that, I mean, if our desire is connection with another person, we're not going to connect with those. We're not going to connect with a narcissist. We're not going to connect with someone who is incapable of connection, because our intention is connection, right? You know, it's just like when I would be dating. If the person is sitting on the park bench with me is not capable of connection and doesn't even desire it, because all he's doing is staring at my boobs or wondering, you know, he's obviously just simply got an intention, well, then I'm not going to be with him, because my only interest is connection and exploring that. What happens to the narcissist when you have left them? Do they deserve to be left alone? I don't know if deserve is the answer, because I don't think it's about, because even if someone wasn't a narcissist, right? I think that's a question that plagues anyone who wants to leave a relationship, right? You might be in a relationship with someone who's not a narcissist, but they just want something different out of a relationship than you do, right? And sometimes that thought process can arise and says, well, how can I leave them alone? That's not fair, and they're good people, and I don't want them to hurt, and I don't want them to be alone. But there's a big difference between saying, I want to have an exclusive romantic relationship with you that's connected, and if the other person doesn't want that or is incapable of it, then it's simply a case of they're not capable of it. But maybe we're just friends, or maybe we're something else. But to be stuck or obligated to not find love elsewhere or to find connection elsewhere. I guess the other thing is people all have choice. And a narcissist, and it's hard to label like that, but it is kind of valuable sometimes. It's their choice whether they want to be alone, right? It's not up to us. It's not up to you. It's their choice. It's not you or no one else. There's 7.5 billion people in the world. If someone doesn't want to be alone, then you go out and you meet people, and you're nice to people, and you make friends. No one's responsible for whether someone else is left alone. You know, we're not the only person on the planet that they could be with, or be friends with, or help out, or anything, right? It's even a funny idea that we are here somehow for someone else, you know, that. And the hard thing with that is sometimes that's actually part of the manipulation. Well, if you don't stay with me, I'll be alone. Well, no, you'll be alone if you choose to be alone. You know, if you want me to stay with you, you have to be nice to me. And whether you're nice to me is also your choice. So you choose to not be nice to me, and you choose to be alone or not be alone. 100% choice. Every person has sovereignty. Every person has freedom of choice. So sometimes it's important to look at some of those manipulations that might have gotten inside our minds. And yeah, I hope you have the beautiful rest of your weekend. And we will see you soon.